So the next thing we need to do, all of that and all you have to show for all this hard work we did is literally the same crappy app where we have A on the right, or A on the left and B on the right and settings, nothing worth anything, right? But we're getting there. So the next thing we want to do is we want to go over to content view, okay? Or I'm sorry, what we want to do, we want to go over to live tutorial _ time tracking. And inside here, we need to do some of the first stuff. Okay, I want to create inside of this scene, okay, or inside of this app, I should say. Come here and we'll say @observed object var env equals global environment. I'm creating my first instance of global environment, this thing we spent so long creating. And this global environment is an observed object. The whole point of that now is that I can pass forward that this env, I can now pass forward and say, create an environment object, and the one I want to pass forward is, of course, none other than env. Simply put, I'm saying, hey, this guy right here, I'm passing him forward to all the children view. Anyone who wants to access him, have at it, okay? And that's it. We're done touching live tutorial _ time tracking. And let's make our way back over to content view, okay? So inside of content view, what I want to do is, if you remember, we created this section with a header of clocks, and inside of it we had just the text, right? Well, we want to do more than that. What we want to do inside of that is we want to create a VStack, okay? And I want to put for each, okay? And specifically, I want to loop through all. Remember, so I'm going to write it first and I'll talk it through. Indices, ID, dot self, and you'll understand, we'll go through what I'm writing here in just a second, okay? So, what the heck was that? Well, first of all, we're going to get an error because I forgot to write up here. I was supposed to write @environment object var env global environment. Okay, that was a big boo-boo on my end. So, environment object. All right, so what we're saying is, hey, by the way, I don't know if you remember, but over here we said content view should be passing forward this observable object of global environment. Yeah, don't forget about that, okay? And we got free reign to access that when he was creating it. We want access to it. So that's what's happening here. The one thing you need to make sure is anytime you create an environment object like this, you're saying, hey, I want to access, whenever this is saying, hey, I want to access the other guy, you have to make sure that something was passed down. Otherwise, you'll get an error. This is essentially assuming that this has to exist. Otherwise, your app will crash. So if you did this without doing this, it's going to crash, okay? So that's that. So now that we created that, what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, by the way, inside of this section, clocks, let's go ahead and look at it. Inside of clocks, I want you to loop through all the different clocks, and for each one of them, I want you to create the word clock. So save it and run it. Let's see what we get. You should see exactly that. Let me know if you guys have any questions, okay? All right, sorry, we're just having some streaming difficulties. I just want to make sure everyone is able to watch and watch well. If you guys are watching, please let me know, okay? Just shoot me something in the comments or the chat, just so I know you guys are still there. For some reason, what I can see is not good, so it doesn't show me that you guys are watching, or it's showing me that my stream is not working. So I just want to make sure that my stream is working for you guys. So if you don't mind, just type something in the chat really quick, letting me know that you got here. So let's go ahead. We ran it. Let's go ahead and look at what we made. It's not the right one. It's this one, right? Boom. Look at that. Clock, clock, clock. Sure enough, if we look at the class, we had created 3 clocks. Now they don't say work, home, and school, but all we said was create 3 texts with the word clock. Okay? So so far we're getting there. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to come here and say, create an H stack. And I want to put inside of that a spacer, because I want to shove everything to the left inside of that H stack. Okay. And instead of just having the text clock, we are going to create our next view. So I like to organize my stuff like this. I come here and I'll just say new, I'm sorry, not new file. I'll come here and say new group. This new group, we'll call it reusable views. Okay. And I'm gonna just put it around there. Right click on that and say new file. And we're gonna call this one, well, come here and, sorry, we need a SwiftUI view. We're gonna grab side, bar, clock, label. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and create that. And of course, it starts out with just hello world. And let's go ahead and fix that. We want some other stuff in there other than just hello world, right? So what do we want here? Well, first thing I want to do, I know for a fact, is I'm going to want to pass through, let's go here and say at environment object. Okay, I want the variable env that we have so graciously been passing around. Environment. Okay, and then I also want to create a binding variable called clock. It's going to be of type clock, and we're going to reference it later. And of course, we'll get rid of that E. Naturally, you're going to get an error down here. It's going to say, hey, our preview needs to have a default clock. So we'll go ahead and I'm just going to do some copy paste to save some time. I just passed this. Okay, so all I said was I'm going to pass through a constant called, it's going to be of type clock, name nothing, color blue. Am I even going to use this preview? Not really. I just have it here for your sake. Okay. Let's make sure we didn't miss anything here. Make sure you close up your H stack. I was getting some errors on my content view page because I had opened up an H stack and I hadn't closed it. So let me just save and run, make sure this works. Okay. It works. All right, so back into the sidebar clock label. You'll see that we still have, all we have is hello world in here. We want more than hello world. So what we're going to ask, or what we're going to try to do in here is we're going to create an H stack. Okay. And I like to put spacing of 0 in this case, just because I want to really tightly control all the space inside of here. And I should, what we'll do actually, instead of doing image clock, I grabbed a clock icon and then I realized you guys probably don't have that. So lucky us, we have SF symbols. Let's just look up clock and or time, whatever time, hour. Sure. All right, there we go. Hourglass. Let's just do hourglass. Okay. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come here and say image system name hourglass. Okay. Rendering mode. I'm going to use .template. I'm going to say, hey, I want this to be resizable. Okay, I want to scale it. So I'm going to say, hey, I want that frame to be a width of 30 and a height of 30. Also, I want to scale to fit. And I want the foreground color to be whatever color that has been predetermined for the clock. Because remember, the clock comes with its own color, and you'll see how we set that later on. And next to this, I'm going to create a spacer, and I'm going to give it a frame with a width of 10. This is how I'm going to tightly manage all of my space. Okay. Keep going. Underneath this now, I'm going to, for now, just put a text that is 0000. Oopsie, that needs to be inside of the H stack. Okay, we're gonna, I went ahead and tried to pick some fonts that and font sizes that I thought would be the best. We're gonna use the system font. Size will be 20. Weight will be .light. And design will be mono-spaced. Okay, we're going to give this whole thing a tightly regulated frame height of 30. We're going to give it a padding on the horizontal aspect of 10. And we're going to give it a foreground color of white. I want it to have white font. Lastly, I'm going to give it a background. What kind of background do I want to give it? I want to give it a rounded rectangle. Of course, a rounded rectangle is going to ask for something in its initializer. Corner radius. I'm going to give it a corner radius of 5 and a foreground color of clock dot color. Okay. It's, right here. Doesn't like that. Okay. So I save that, and right next to it, I'm going to, or underneath that, I'm going to put another underneath the text spacer. Okay, and that'll have a frame width of 10. You're about to reap the rewards, reap the fruit of what we've just been working on. Okay, so clock.name. So we'll save it. Let's leave that as it is for a second. I'm going to copy sidebar clock label. I'm going to go back over to content view. I'm going to say, hey, instead of putting the word text clock, why don't we go ahead and say sidebar clock label, okay? And specifically, sidebar clock label, it's going to say, hey, you need to pass a clock into me, okay? The clock we're going to pass in is going to be self.env.clocks and of course index number clock. Boom. Let's save it, let's run it, and then I want to talk about something super crucial that you probably wouldn't even realize, okay? But you'll understand in a moment. So, okay, it's an hourglass. It didn't look as nice as the clock. It's because we stretched it and did all sorts of stuff with it, but it's fine. It works. It's functional. You can deal with the aesthetics later. Now, you will notice that I did this. I said for each self.env.clocks.indices, and then I said id.self, and then I referred to, I did this, right? Well, you might have wondered, well, Chris, why didn't you just do this? Why didn't you just, don't copy what I'm about to do, okay? I'm just showing you an example. Do not copy it. You might have said, Chris, well, why don't you just go ahead and do this? You could have said ID, and then you could have just come here and passed in clock, right? I mean, this is a thing. This exists, right? I mean, I can go here and just do that instead, right? Now I can run through the actual clock. Maybe I wanted to do text and say, just come here and say clock.name, right? Well, I can do that, right? But there's a really crucial piece that you'll miss here. And you'll notice that this is not binding. There's no $sign anywhere, right? In sidebar clock label, if you remember when we built it, we said we need to pass a binding clock. And the reason we need to pass a binding clock is because we need this number, this to update over time, okay? And anytime the clock changes, this needs to change. So we can't just pass a clock. We need to pass a binding clock. And the only way we could have passed that binding clock is actually by running through the indices. Now ours should look identical again. I ran through the indices, and I essentially, you can almost think of it as saying, oh, I'm passing through the bound array, and I want this item or element, this specific element at the index of clock. And now because the array was bound, we're getting an element from the array. You can almost think about it as if the element of that array is now bound. So that is why we had to do it like this. And that's how you can go ahead and put a binding variable inside of the object that's going to be created, or the view that's going to be created inside of for each, and still pass something bound into it, okay? So go ahead and try not doing that. Try the other way, and if you want, in your free time, and you'll see why we had to do what we did, okay? So that's that. Let's go ahead and move on to the next piece. So we save that, okay? Let's go ahead and look at the next thing we can do. I'm going to fold this code up for a second, okay? Let's go ahead and fold that code up, fold up more, and actually what I wanted to do, I'm sorry, was I wanted to add one more thing into the clock section, okay? Inside the clock section, I'm going to fold up the VStack, and I'm going to add one last thing. I'm going to add a VStack, okay? And I apologize. There's one thing I wanted to add for some reason. Oh, it seems to, there it is. Okay, sorry about that. I remember what I wanted to add. Here we go. Get rid of that. I apologize. So inside of this VStack, what I meant to say is fold up this for each loop. My apologies. Underneath the for each loop, what I'd like to do is create a button. Okay? And button is going to have action. What is action going to have? Well, I'm going to come up here and create a new state variable at state var. We'll call it show sheet equal to false. Okay? And I'm going to come here and say, hey, you know what? Show sheet equal true. You click on this button, show sheet is true. Okay? And I want to make sure at the very end I say button style. Don't forget, we don't want any of the default styling because we're creating something nice and custom. We're going to make it plain button style. Now we can style it ourselves. But what do we want to have inside of there? We would like to have an HStack. I'm just going to say text, add new. All right, and an image, system name plus. And for the sake of styling, we'll just say dot padding, dot top. Here the button style, and then we're going to put padding here. Padding. Okay. Dot border or dot background. And I'm going to give it a color in a second. Let's skip that for a second. Dot corner radius 10. Okay. Brief intermission. What we're going to do is I'm going to create one more file here. Okay. And I'm going to call this file universals. These are just things I want to be able to use anywhere at any time for anything. Okay. And I'm going to copy and paste some stuff in here, and you're going to say, ah, this is stupid. Why would you add this? This is like a waste. Well, honestly, it's a convenience factor. So I'm going to come here and say import SwiftUI. Convenience and consistency. I just went ahead and created 6 colors that I'm going to use multiple times over and over. Okay, different grays: light gray, light gray, dark gray, dark gray, dark gray, and light green. Okay, you can pause. You can make these colors yourselves. You can say, screw this. I'm not going to add this. So I'm going to go ahead and go to content view, and I'm going to go to where I was adding the padding in the corner radius of 10. I'm going to say dot background, and I'm going to add a color, and that's going to be dark gray. Okay, so now when I run it, actually one other thing I want to do is I want to say dot opacity of 0.5. I just like having this kind of translucent effect. Well, let's look at everything we just built. Okay, let's take a look at it, make sure I'm not missing anything in the chat. If you guys are chatting, make sure to let me know, okay? Because as of now, I don't see anything. Okay? Please feel free to ask me anything. Okay? Well, look at that. Now we have our button here. We have our clocks that we made. Those are default. Of course, when you actually create this app, you don't want default work, home, school. You want to start off with nothing, right? But for now, I'm just showing you how we have it right now because we hadn't created the add new button. So now this add new button, technically speaking, when I click add new, I should see a sheet, but there is no sheet to show you, right? Or technically I shouldn't see it because when I clicked it, I did flip the show sheet variable from true to false, but show sheet isn't actually controlling anything at all. So let's make it control something. I'm going to go here and I'm going to fold up most of this. Okay, I'm going to come all the way down here, and on this one, I'm going to say dot sheet. Okay, and we'll have is presented, and is presented will be controlled by show sheet. Okay, well, what are we actually showing? We are going to show, let's just start by doing this. We'll say show the word potato. All right, let's run it. Let's see what happens. Here comes our app loads, app launches, add new. Look at that, potato. Okay, well, what are we going to do with that? That's completely useless. So let's go ahead and make something that's useful. We're going to create another view. New file, SwiftUI view. This one, it gets progressively easier and easier and easier and better. Okay, and this one, of course, will be called add new clock view. Okay, so add new clock view. If we go here, it doesn't need to have a lot of stuff. Okay, first thing we're going to do, we are going to add a couple things. Okay. At environment object, var env, none other than global environment. Okay, I'm going to have binding variable called sheet shown. Well, if the sheet's already shown, why do I need to bind it? Well, that's in case I want to programmatically flip it to false so that we can hide it. Okay, that'll be of type bool. And then we'll have a state variable called clock name. String will be equal to nothing. And a state variable called color. It'll be equal to color dot blue. Okay. And color dot blue, oh, that's going to be a default value, okay? And you'll see why we need that in just a moment. So now, in the meat, I always do that, global environment, there we go. Text. Inside of here now, we're going to add a few other things. Just 1 second. And you'll see what the point, what we're doing now is. So, first thing we need to do is we're going to create a VStack. VStack. Okay? And inside this VStack, I'm going to put, first I'm going to put a text. That's going to be a title. It's going to say add new clock. I'm going to use some default fonts here. Font dot title. Okay, predetermined, predefined font for us. We're going to put an HStack underneath that. That HStack will contain a VStack, and the only reason for that is purely styling. You don't have to do this, but inside of it, I'm going to put, first I'm going to put a text field. Sorry. It's going to say clock name. That would be, of course, the placeholder value. And it's going to be bound to, sorry, text clock name. Okay, we're going to give it a frame width of 150. We're going to have dot text field style of plain text field style, and we'll have dot padding. We just are going to put dot bottom 3. What the heck is the point of that? Well, underneath I'm going to put a rectangle, and I'm going to give it a frame height of 1, aka a line. Foreground color will be dot gray, and that entire thing will have a padding of 10. Let's run it. Look at what we got so far. Oh, of course. Save. That's okay. You know what? We don't even need these previews. This is irrelevant, quite frankly. Let's get rid of this junk. Sorry, got rid of one of those curly brackets. Let's just fold up that HStack. We'll keep going. You'll understand what we're doing in just a moment. So, go ahead and fold that up. The next thing we have underneath that, my apologies, is we need to actually have, sorry, inside of this HStack, we put this VStack, right? That VStack is going to be where we can type in our clock name, and right to its right, we would like to have a color picker. Okay, I don't want it to have any title. That's what that would have been. Selection. It's going to be connected to the color state variable, and this picker I would like to have supports opacity equal to false. Not interested in that right now. Overcomplicates things for no reason. And the foreground, actually we don't even need a foreground color for that. That's it. Okay, now we can go ahead and fold up that HStack. We're almost done with this view, okay? You'll understand why we made it in just a moment. So we should have folded up just that HStack. Okay, we'll create an HStack underneath that, and that's going to contain our buttons. So we're going to have button number 1. Okay, and we're going to put action and button number 2. So first one is going to say add, and I'm going to give it a foreground color, a foreground of, sorry, just color dot green. That is so easy. There you go. And then the next one is going to say cancel. Okay, and that one is going to have, actually I don't think I need to give it a foreground color. Oh yeah, I don't need to give it a foreground color at all. Okay, so one's going to say cancel, one's going to say add. What I like to have cancel to the left. let's put cancel to the left. Okay, cancel and then add. The cancel one, I'm just, for no real reason, I'm going to put it inside an H stack. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and put spaces on either side. I like to make the cancel button a little bigger. Just feel like I like it. Don't ask me why. All right, and then I'm going to go here and just put some padding on this entire thing. Okay, and each of these buttons should do something, right? So the cancel button is just going to say, hey, you know what? Change my mind. Sheet shown will be equal to false. Get rid of it. Okay, and the other one is going to say, first, this is for you. Okay, prints are always for you, not for anyone else. If you don't want it, don't add it. Adding new clock. And we're going to say, hey, remember that environment that we had? I want to add a clock to it. So append. What do I want to add? I want to add a clock to clocks, and it's going to be of type, we're going to initialize it with clock name and color. Okay. We're going to come here and say print self.env.clocks. That's once more just for ourselves. And of course we're done with this at that point, so dot sheet shown equals false. All right, let us enjoy the fruits of our labor. All right, add new clock view. Let's go over to content view for a second, and remember this sheet we had here, all we need to do is come here and say, hey, don't show us potato, show us add new clock view. And that's going to say sheet shown. Honestly, frankly, I should have named this show sheet. Go ahead and just write show sheet, and then go here and say show sheet. That's how you make life easy. Go back to add clock view, change sheet shown to show sheet. Okay, I should have done that. That is the nice way to do things. Show sheet, save, run, boom. All right, the moment we've been waiting for, okay? Now I click add new, boom, I can add a new clock. I'm gonna name this clock new clock. And even nicer, I'm using multiple screens, so you didn't see it at first, but this is what you wanted, right? It's gonna be something to pick my new color, right? Maybe I wanna do a nice purple. Okay, add. Look at that. We have, oh man, bless me. All right, we have a new clock here, and it has the color that we wanted. I mean, that's great. We just modified the global environment. All right. Of course, none of this is persistent, right? So when I save it and I run it, that's going to be gone. This is not actually permanently stored. So permanent storage, we will get to eventually. Right now, we're just building some way to track our time. Okay. So we'll save that, and we are moving right along. This is going quite well. So let's see. This view is entirely done. Add clock view, add new clock view. That guy is done. All right.